This is going to be an interesting one. So the topic of today is WLToys. Now, WLToys used to be one of the most popular RC brands out there, at the very least, one of the most popular budget RC brands out there. They offered some high-speed vehicles like the 144001 at budget prices. I remember when you could pick up a 144001 for around £60, which I think was around $80, which, considering what you got for the money, was actually very good value. Now, in recent times, I have noticed, and I'm pretty sure others have noticed as well, that WLToys are a little bit more quiet than usual. We haven't seen many new releases, or at the very least, we haven't seen many good new releases. And I think there are some reasons for that. I think there is a reason why WLToys are no longer popular or doing very well in general in the in the budget RC market, I should say. So I just thought today we would talk about the rise and fall of WLToys, how they gained so much popularity and why, and then of course what has happened. Why are WLToys no longer as popular as they used to be? You know, the fall of WLToys. I thought it would be a good idea to do another podcast style video, because this is the third episode now. The first episode I spoke about opinions. I'm pretty sure most of you have already listened to that one already. Second episode, the one before this, which I posted yesterday, was about the new Rlaarlo cars and just Rlaarlo in general. Now, this style of video, or at the very least this podcast style, I wasn't sure if it was going to be something you guys would want. I know there are some channels out there, or some dedicated podcast style channels out there, but because I mostly do reviews and my main channel is very much focused around doing RC reviews rather than this kind of style of video, I wasn't sure if it would go down too well, but the feedback has been great. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who has already hit that subscribe button, because, starting a second channel and starting any new channel is always going to be difficult. It's always hard to try and gain another following. Yes, I did have a little bit of a boost from the first channel. I think that's on 52,000 now. I think 52,100 maybe. So the first channel's doing pretty well. It's growing in size, and of course, when I announced that I was starting the second channel, a lot of you did come over as well to support me. So yeah, massive thank you for that. There's been some really good feedback actually in the comments. A lot of you are saying that you like this style of content. A lot of you are saying that you prefer listening to me live compared to the review videos that I do, the normal videos, which may sound a little bit forced. I kind of get where people are coming from. The review videos, I tend to try and make those between 8 to 15 minutes long. They're usually around 11-12 minutes, and in that 12 minutes you are putting in a lot of information very quickly, so it's quite a lot to take in a relatively short time frame. I've never really been into doing videos up to sort of half an hour to an hour long. I find that's just a bit too long, in my opinion. I mean, no one really wants to sit and listen to no one really wants to watch a video for an hour about a $70 RC car. At the very least, that's just my personal opinion. People may disagree, but I think the sweet spot for review videos, I would say, is probably between 8 to 15 minutes. Because what you'll find is most people just want to know the answer. They want to know if it's worth spending their money on. They want to know if it's good quality. They want to know all of those really important details in the least amount of time possible before they hit buy and spend their hard-earned cash. So you find review videos need to be fairly short and sweet and not up to an hour long. That's just my opinion. I'm not saying channels that do that shouldn't be doing that. If that's their style, that's their style. But for me, I think that's a bit too long. So at the very least, with these podcast style videos, you can sort of take your time, relax, and just however long it takes, that's how long it takes, and that's what I'm quite enjoying at the moment about doing this style of video compared to the other videos that I do on the main channel, which I love doing, by the way. But it does get quite stressful, so it's nice to chill out and just throw a topic out there and talk about it and have a debate in the comments or whatever you want to do, you know. And that's really why I'm enjoying this second channel and starting this podcast. So yeah, the feedback has been great. You know, lots of you are saying you're enjoying it. It's very relaxed and natural, and you're looking forward to my next episode. So, you know, that is all really good to see. The fact that you're saying it feels more chilled, it's not as hectic as the reviews, and all of that all kind of adds up and makes sense. And again, like I said a few minutes ago, the review videos, you're trying to put in a lot of information very quickly to give it to the viewer or the potential buyer for them to make their mind up, you know, as to whether or not they should spend their money. So it can seem hectic, it can seem a bit sort of over the top, and I fully appreciate that, but that is the style of review videos. You'll find most review videos are like that. Very short, very sweet, straight to the point kind of thing. And that is the direction I'm going down on the main channel, because that seems to do better than the really long videos. But anyway, we're not here to talk about all of that. We're here to talk about WLToys and the rise and fall of WLToys. Now, there's a fair amount of information, or a fair amount of points, that I want to cover in this episode 3. I think what we'll do first is we'll talk about the rise of WLToys, and then after we'll talk about the fall of WLToys and the reason why I would say they're no longer as popular as they used to be. And there are some very, very clear reasons why that might be. Now let's start with the rise of WLToys then. So let's talk about affordability and performance. Now, WLToys, we're kind of going back to, I think they gained popularity before I even started on this platform. So I started my channel in April 2020. I think they'd already had some good releases before that. I didn't know a lot about WLToys before I started YouTube, but I know the A959, I think it was called. That was a very popular little buggy, and it was very affordable, and it was very fast, and that was why lots of people liked it, because you were getting a lot for your money, and I think that is what made it so popular. And then obviously when I started in 2020, there was the release of the 144001, which I absolutely loved, and to this day I know that thing had a massive impact on my channel. And it certainly helped me get some views, and, you know, I did some upgrade videos. I think I did some brushless upgrades. I did some speedrun stuff with it, and it gained quite a lot of popularity in a relatively short space of time. And it did go down well on my channel, and I really do think that helped grow my channel in the early days, at the very least from 0 to, let's say, 500 subscribers. The 144001 played a massive part in helping me grow my channel. And then obviously after that, there was some other 1/10 scale cars that they come out with, that they released, I should say. And a couple of crawlers, you know, sort of budget crawlers. Nothing really as popular as the early WLToys cars. I mean, in the early days, they offered a low price, decent performance. You know, especially considering a lot of their cars were brushed. You know, they had brushed motor setups. The 144001 was an excellent sort of entry point into the hobby. You know, for beginners who are just getting into RC, who, you know, didn't want to spend hundreds of dollars or hundreds of pounds on buying an RC car. You know, they could just go and spend 60 to 80 pounds, whatever it was at the time, up to $100 on a 144001, and go out and have some fun. And work out whether or not the RC hobby was for them, and whether or not it was something they could see themselves getting into. You know, the ready-to-run appeal of a WLToys package, you know, the 144001 package, it come with everything you needed in the box. You know, it had the buggy itself, the fairly decent transmitter. The early transmitters were quite nice. I think there was a couple of basic tools, basic charger, and of course a battery. So you had everything in the box to get you up and running without having to worry too much. You know, what do I need to buy? Do I need anything fancy to get into this hobby? Everything was there for you. And not only that, but they were available from most places. I mean, Banggood had them, AliExpress. You know, I think there was some local places in the US. I don't think many places had them in the UK, because, you know, Chinese cars just aren't very popular here in the UK. Most RC hobbyists in the UK prefer the main, you know, the big brands. That's definitely something I've noticed in the years of doing YouTube. I find that Chinese brands aren't really supported over here, or, you know, a UK brand like FTX, for example, may rebrand some of the more decent Chinese cars, you know, like FTX with their Tracer. That was a high boxing, you know, 16889. FTX took that design, rebranded it, and that's very popular here in the UK. You know, just like FTX is it's a UK brand, so naturally it is very popular. So we've seen that before, but in general, any of the actual sort of Chinese brands, I mean, MJX and Rlaarlo are definitely gaining in popularity here now, because you can get sort of easy parts availability now through places like Serious RC. But apart from those two, a lot of the other Chinese brands just aren't really that popular. But anyway, going off topic slightly there, but WLToys gained a lot of popularity very quickly. A lot of their cars were being pushed by influencers, YouTubers, whatever you want to call us, reviewers. We've got loads of different names. A lot of the WLToys stuff was being pushed by YouTube channels. There was some Facebook groups set up. There was even, I think there's still a group on Facebook, which I think I'm a part of, or at the very least I joined that group but didn't really post anything. I think there was a speedrun group where people were trying to get the fastest, or the world record for the fastest sort of 144001 or something along those lines. But anyway, it gained a lot of popularity. Lots of people liked it, lots of people upgraded it, lots of people did many things with it because it was a fast, affordable, beginner-friendly platform, and lots of people liked that. And that's why it became, you know, that's why WLToys became so popular, because of their early cars being really good, really affordable. And then it just kind of went wrong. You know, we haven't seen much from WLToys. We haven't seen really any good new releases since the 144001. There's been some decent cars. They did change their design with another one of their sort of, I think it was a 1/12 scale buggy. I can't remember all the names now. You know, I mean, they don't even give the cars names. They've all got numbers, so it's really hard to try and remember all the different numbers. But there has been some new releases, but none of them have really been worth a second look. Like, in all honesty, you know, yeah, the reviews are pretty decent. You know, I had some fun with them and everything else, but nothing left a lasting impression like the 144001 did. And I never tried the A959, but I think that was another one of those little cars that left a lasting impression and people really liked it. And I think that was just before I started my channel, maybe 2019. That thing gained a lot of popularity. I think they may have had another truck as well, like a off-road short course truck maybe, or a trophy truck. I can't remember. I think there was a green trophy truck style car that they had, which was also seriously popular in the early days. But again, that was before I started. That was before I got back into the hobby, and I had literally like no knowledge of all the current releases, all of what was popular. You know, it's taken me a very long time to get all of that knowledge, because I got back into this in 2020, not really knowing all the up-to-date news and what was going on in the RC world, and it's taken me a long time to try and get an idea of how things are these days, and yeah, what's going on with all the different RC brands out there. So we know why they got so popular. We know why they were appealing. You know, why they appealed to so many people and why people loved them. So what happened? What happened to one of the most popular budget RC brands out there? If you can hear my mouse being clicked in the background, that's because I've got some bullet points up on the screen to try and help me, because believe it or not, but talking continuously for this length of time, you kind of have to have some points just to guide you, because I'm still new to this. It's kind of like being on the radio. I'm still new to this. You've got to make sure everything's flowing. You've got to make sure you're talking about the right stuff. So I've got some bullet points open to try and give me a little bit of a prompt, so I kind of know what flow we're taking with these podcast style videos. So let's talk about the fall of WLToys. So what happened? Well, increased competition in the budget market, I would say. There's newer brands now, there's better brands. I think WLToys, when you consider brands like MJX, for example, MJX are incredibly strong competitors in the budget RC market at the moment. And, I would actually say MJX are probably the number one sort of affordable budget RC brand at the moment. Their Hyper-Go range of vehicles has literally just gone wild. They're incredibly popular. They're becoming incredibly famous because they are doing what WLToys used to do. You're talking about fast, affordable, good looking little cars that perform well and are just really good. And that is literally it. And that is what MJX are giving us. They're giving us the old WLToys formula. And they don't seem to be... They've kind of got the formula now. And they're making little changes here and there to make sure that they stay popular. And I think the word is innovating. They are innovating. They're making changes. We're seeing the same from Rlaarlo. We're seeing the same from Hyboxing, HBX. Although they've been a little bit quiet lately. We haven't seen many new releases from Hyboxing, HBX. And I really hope we see more from them. Because I would say MJX are probably number 1, Rlaarlo are probably number 2, HBX are probably number 3, number 4 I honestly don't know at this stage, or number 5. Maybe I'll do like another top 5, sort of affordable budget brands video. I think I've already done something like that, but it might have been a short. I don't think I've done a long form video of that. I'll write that one down, potential video idea. But essentially what these brands are offering are superior build quality, better electronics, and what feels like a more refined design, I would say. The cars feel a little bit nicer. It feels like there's been better quality control compared to WLToys. I mean, there was some major issues with some of the WLToys models that were released after the 144001. Such a mouthful. Why can't they just give these cars names? There were some cogging issues with some of the early brushless models, which were almost unusable. Then they released a kit where you could, I think you had to change the ESC and motor or the gearing. We're going back a few years now, so I can't quite remember. But they did release a kit, and I think they were charging people for it. And I may be wrong, but I think it was around $50, $60. And to me, I found that incredibly strange, because if you've released a version 1 of a car that wasn't tested properly, there was no proper quality control done on it, and people have received it and it turns out to be horrible, it doesn't drive properly, doesn't feel nice, there should be some goodwill. There should be, a place where you could maybe go, or someone you could speak to who would send you the upgrade kit for free, kind of like a goodwill gesture. And I think if WLToys did things like that, they may have retained a little bit of loyalty from some of the people who used to love their brand. But I think a lot of people were put off by some of the business decisions that WLToys have made. I don't think they look after their customers, they don't listen to their customers, and they just kind of do whatever they want to do. And I think that's why you're seeing the rise of MJX, Rlaarlo, Hyboxing, because they do listen to what people want. They do listen to people reviewing their cars. They do listen to people who have their cars and are posting comments up on their Facebook accounts and stuff like that. That they are listening and they're making changes, and that is why I would say those 3 brands are probably the most popular these days. WLToys... Let's talk about innovation, because I think WLToys, they did release some updated versions of their popular models. We got, I think, like the 144016, was it? The 17 maybe. And there were some very small sort of incremental upgrades rather than sort of massive innovation steps, forward. And then obviously competitors have been able to adopt brushless systems, improve suspension, overall components, and the overall components are a lot better now compared to WLToys. I think the competitors have kind of seen why WLToys got so popular and for what reasons, and have kind of taken their formula and made it their own, and that's why it's working for them. And good luck to them, because if that's the formula, if that's what WLToys kind of kiss goodbye to, then why shouldn't someone else take that formula and make it their own and get really popular and everything else? Let's talk about quality control and durability issues. I'm just reading off my bullet points here. Inconsistent quality is something I've put down on here. And I think that's because some cars, I don't think I had any major issues, but I did read some comments on my videos, and I've seen on some Facebook posts and stuff, people had some issues out the box, with signal loss, and like I said, a cogging issue was one of them. Another thing is WLToys cars were quite often fragile. Some of the components would break quite easily, and then obviously that gets quite frustrating for people, and you have to wait potentially up to 2 weeks for parts. It's just a bit of a headache. But I think one of the main issues was cogging on their 124016, I think it was, and 17, which is, if you don't know what cogging is, it's kind of like stuttering at low speeds, and sometimes you can get some overheating, and it just impacts performance and, the longevity of the car itself. It's just, trying to drive around an RC car that's suffering from cogging issues just really isn't very nice. Looking at the electronics, the ESC and receiver units, a lot of the time we see kind of like 2-in-1 or 3-in-1 ESC and receivers, 5-wire servos, all of that stuff is very limiting to people when it comes to upgrading. At the very least, you want a 3-wire servo these days, a standalone receiver, standalone ESC, so that if one of those if one of those components fails or you want to make upgrades, it's a lot easier to do than using all the integrated and combined 3-in-1 ESC, 4-in-1 ESC, 5-in-1 ESCs, LED controllers built in. No one wants all of that stuff. No one cares. Just give us a nice, decent platform which is easy to work on, budget friendly, beginner friendly, and it's going to do really well. I think another reason is rising prices. WLToys gained popularity. Their popular models, like the 144001, which is arguably their most popular model, increased in price massively. And I may be wrong, but I think it's around £100 or $100 now. Let's quickly Google it while we're talking. Okay, maybe like £80 maybe, £80-90. So I think it's around $100, $110 maybe. I think it's different wherever you look. But essentially, it has gone up in price a little bit. And I think it was actually more expensive. It may have actually come down in price now. But it kind of took away, when that price increase happened, it kind of took away that budget king sort of title that little buggy had, which made it less attractive compared to the newer, more capable alternatives out there, like the Hyper-Go range, for example. People are going to try and buy the thing that gives them the most for their money. It's naturally what we do as humans. We like to get the most for our money. So if MJX are offering an RC car that's way better for the same price, that's what you're going to go for. If WLToys can offer a slightly less, let's say, for example, slightly less quality car, but it's £30-40 cheaper, $40-50 cheaper, you may take a risk with that, because yes, it may not be like the MJX, but it's still a bit more affordable, and it's only just slightly less good quality-wise, for example, than the more expensive option. But when the less, when the lower quality car is kind of priced the same as the much better car, well, of course you're going to go for the other option, aren't you? Because that's naturally what we do. That is what we do. I think there's one final point I want to talk about. I'm just looking at how long this is going on. What we got? 24 minutes. Okay, so it's kind of like in the good range. I think most of these episodes are going to be up to 30 minutes long, and the ones where I have special guests on, which I am planning very soon, they may be longer, because obviously there's more to talk about, there's more to throw in, so they could go up to an hour, I would say. I think the final point I want to talk about is the lack of after-sales support, parts availability, that kind of thing. Now, when it comes to customer service, sort of after-sales support, with WLToys, there is basically none. If you try to email WLToys or you try to contact them on Facebook or anything like that, you will not get a reply. WLToys always seem to be one of those RC companies who just doesn't want to deal with the problems after. They don't want to know. They don't want to know if you're struggling to get parts. They just don't care. Essentially, they just want to sell cars and make money, and that doesn't work. You need to be able to support the community who are buying your cars. You need to offer some kind of after-sales support, even if it's totally useless. At least you get a reply. At the very least, it's always nice to get a reply. There's nothing worse, in my opinion, than being ignored. And that's by a relatively large sort of RC company in the budget market. Totally ignored. I think that is so incredibly rude, and it does put you off from buying more of their cars. Why are you going to continue investing in a company that doesn't care about you? And I totally understand that. Totally understand that. And then trying to get any kind of warranty, any warranty claim or anything like that, yeah, that's not happening. Parts availability, I think, just like with a lot of the sort of cheaper Chinese cars, are always going to be an issue, depending on what brand you go for now. Because I know MJX and Rlaarlo parts can be a lot easier to get now. I know, especially for us in the UK, you can get local parts, and you can have the parts sort of next day. I'm not sure about the US. Whoever's in the US, let me know what it's like to get parts support for MJX and Rlaarlo cars. Do you have local parts support? Is it easy to get local parts, or do you have to wait 2 years, 2 weeks? Probably feels like 2 years when you've broken your RC car and you just want to get back out and use it. How hard is it to get parts for MJX, Rlaarlo, high boxing? Let me know in the comment section. Let me know, is it really that difficult? And is that something that puts you off? And is that why you may have gone for one of the larger brands, one of the bigger brands, because parts availability is so much better? But anyway, going off topic again slightly, WLToys we're talking about today. And I think for a lot of people, not being able to get parts would have been another limiting factor. Again, one of the reasons why MJX and Rlaarlo are getting so popular is because parts are getting easier to get hold of. Parts are becoming easier to get hold of, I should say, which is appealing to a lot of people, because there's a lot of people who like their cars, a lot of people who want their cars, and I see this in my comment section all the time, but they're put off by lack of parts availability. So if that improves, and I do have a feeling that we are going to see massive improvements when it comes to parts availability, I think those two brands could make their way up to the to being in the same group as a lot of the big market leaders, like Traxxas Armour, not Rlaarlo. Well, yeah, maybe Rlaarlo one day. Traxxas Armour, Team Associated, all the big brands out there. MJX and Rlaarlo could find their way up there with the big people, the big names in the hobby. Definitely something that could happen in the next 5 years, I would say, if they continue going the way they are. Anyway, well, that was a fairly eventful sort of episode today, on episode 3 of the More BeyondRC podcast. Yeah, I am planning on getting another RC YouTuber involved in the next, might not be the next episode, but it may be the episode after. We have a topic that we want to talk about, which I think will resonate with a lot of newer channels, a lot of people who are starting out in the hobby. A lot of people who are starting out on YouTube. I think that is a topic which is worth talking about. So I'm kind of putting something together. I know you don't just want to hear my voice all the time, and the whole point of a podcast is sometimes to get, more than one voice. It'd be nice to hear from another person or another two people, and that is something I'm trying to put together. I just want to make that known. It's not just going to be me on my own. There is going to be other people involved. But of course, this is still a This is still a very new idea and a very new format for me. So I'm still learning. I'm still learning how to try and make this successful. I'm learning how, what people want, what people like. And it's going to take me a while. This is only the 3rd episode, and hopefully, this could turn into a fairly popular thing in the future. Obviously, the main channel is the main channel, and this could hopefully be another popular sort of place where we can talk about stuff. But there's so much work to do to make that happen. But I do want to let you know that because this has gone down quite well, as we see in the feedback at the beginning of this episode, because this has gone down so well, I am planning some bigger stuff. Because if it's what you want, if it's what you like, then I'll give you more of that. I'll give you more of what you want. So yeah, it's all good. All right, guys. Well, another good sort of topic today: WLToys, the rise and fall. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button on this second channel. If you like this RC-inspired podcast, definitely check out the 1st and 2nd episode. The opinions episode was a relatively good one, I would say, the first one. There's some slightly controversial stuff spoken about in that one, which I think is worth listening to. And then, the yesterday's one, which was Rlaarlo. Check that out if you like Rlaarlo. Or if not, stay tuned for episode 4, which I'm not sure what that's going to be about yet. I have got a list of topics which I do want to talk about, which I think a lot of you will want to hear about. So I'll just pick one of those and do what I've been doing for the last half an hour, which is talking to you about that particular topic. Anyway, guys, I'm going to let you go. I hope you enjoyed today's video and you didn't get bored and click away. If you've watched the whole thing, then, well, give yourself a pat on the back, because what we at 32 minutes. It's a long time to listen to my voice. But I know a lot of you are liking the more relaxed style, so hopefully you'll enjoy the good stuff that will be coming up soon. Alright, guys, take it easy. I'll catch you soon. Cheers.